right? And we provide training for HR professionals and company supervisors, and we provide divorce coaching and case management, providing the guidance and direction that your employees so desperately need as they go through the end of their relationship. Divorce is a huge disruptor, not only to the employee going through it, but to the company that they work for. And our coaches have a unique perspective on divorce. They have a deep understanding of the legal, financial, and emotional aspects of divorce, and they can handle even the highest conflict of cases with compassion and professionalism. And our coaches are trained to look at the entire picture, helping your employees make good decisions based on their goals and their expectations. So if you are an HR benefits manager or an HR benefits provider or consultant, please reach out to us and see if adding our suite of solutions is a good fit for your business. And a reminder, we have SHRM credits for SHRM members, and we'll be posting a link at the end of this broadcast so that you can grab those. And today we're going to be talking about Divorce Month. That's right, we're in January. This is the first week in January, and it's really, really important because you're going to start to see some things in your employees that have been postponing making these decisions after the holidays. This is actually this week that we're in right now is very, very active. So I'm going to be speaking with my very special guest today from across the pond in Ireland, Aoife Gaffney. Aoife is the founder of Prudence Money Penny Coaching. She is an award-winning international money, relationship, divorce, and life coach. She empowers women to take charge of their lives and to earn more money. She is a member of the Professional Speakers Association, the Institute of Banking, and a former qualified financial advisor. But for her, coaching is more fun and probably much more heart-centered for her. She's an experienced EFT practitioner, hypnotherapist, a silent counseling practitioner, NLP master, and trauma-informed practitioner and energy worker. She currently lives in Ireland in her tiny house and frequently dreams of a warmer climate like South Florida. Maybe if you can come and visit and a bigger house. She is a regular contributor to Irish newspapers and to radio. Welcome, Aoife. How are you?
I'm good. And thank you so much for having me, Vicky.
I'm so glad that you're here today as we talk about some shifts in employees and how that will show up and impact employers and how employers need to be prepared for what's happening. So we're just going to dive right in. What are the indicators that an employee, employers need to look for if they notice those changes, those challenges in an employee, like a dip in productivity suddenly, or less engagement, or maybe just a change in their complete normal behavior?
It could be one of many indicators, and the biggest one is a change in normal behavior. So
Right.
it can be either a dip in productivity or, ironically, an enormous increase in productivity, and that the person is reluctant to leave the office, which in the short term may benefit the employer, but in the long term, they're facing burnout. So any change to what is considered normal behavior, are they presenting differently? Has their work pattern changed? Are they more forgetful? Those kind of those subtle changes that are sometimes are sort of intangible, but if you know your employees well, you'll pick up on those very quickly.
Yeah, that's important because suddenly when somebody starts just exhibiting something at all that's just not quite normal, it's something to pay attention to, right?
And
Well,
sometimes it is an intangible, and it's something that colleagues or peers might pick up on faster than a line manager.
oh, interesting. Yeah, those employees that are closer. So what do you think, how can an employer or the workplace demonstrate to their employees that they are committed to supporting them through an emotional crisis? Because we know that, at least here in the United States, 92% of employees that are going through a divorce will never tell their employer. The number one reason is they're afraid of being fired. So how can an employer put in, show their employees that it's okay to come forward?
I think it's very important that if there is an employee assistance program or an employee benefits program in place, that employees are aware of that. And when I did some research, about 75% of employees are not aware that this program was even in place in the first place. So even having that program in place is a demonstration from the employer that employees are valued, that this is a great place to work. We value our employees. We want to support you. We want to invest heavily in you. We want to invest in your training, and we want to focus on retention, because the cost of hiring a new employee is enormous, and it's considerably greater than the cost of supporting and training an existing employee.
Right, absolutely. And statistics show us that 1 in 10 of the employees that are going through a divorce will quit within the first year. So that, to your point, it is a very expensive uh, cost to the employer when their employees leave. The number one reason an employee leaves during that first year is they felt completely unsupported and disconnected from their employers during this process. So, excuse me, you've heard leave your divorce at home. Well, divorce is a 9 to 5, Monday through Friday industry. Courts, attorneys, everybody, they're Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Your employees need that time to be dealing with some of the, and mandatory, when a judge tells you you have to be in their chambers, you have to be in their chambers. You will face contempt of court. So so we know, that having that support system could alleviate some of that the quitting issue that we just talked about. But what are some of the other values? And when I say values, that can be cultural values, but also financial values to an employer that offers divorce support benefits to their employees.
Well, a happy employee is a more productive employee, and particularly at the level that I work at, and I work with high net worth executives and individuals. If that person is a linchpin in the organization, particularly in slightly smaller organizations, that if one person leaves, it's like one leg of a table. And so if you have a vital, valued employee, and you have invested heavily, not only you have invested in finding the right person in the first place, but you then have invested in putting a package together for them, getting them trained, introducing them to your clients. They've brought their wealth of wisdom and expertise to the business, and they are an integral part of the business. And if that employee leaves, it there's huge amounts of especially if they're part of a team, if
Mhm.
a vital member of a team leaves, the rest of the team really suffer. Not only does the company, the bottom line of the company suffer, but the rest of the team can feel a little bit jarred in that, well,
Lost.
they
Yeah.
can feel a bit lost, because these are the intangibles, the companionship, camaraderie, peer support, all these really, they're hard to measure, these performance indicators. They are harder to measure because they are more subtle.
It
But if
is.
you take one of those things away, you're very aware of the impact that it has on the bottom line. So team performance and a collaborative support arrangement is essential. It is absolutely essential.
I agree with you. And we talked about uh, the impact on the team, and I don't think that people start, really recognize that, you know, the importance of, you know, we're in an industry it's, let's just face it, it's really uncomfortable to talk about, period, right? There's a lot of reasons for that, but primarily it's just not my business and not my place. But when you start to understand stories like this, where a valuable team member that carries a lot of intellectual capital in their head, right? They're walking around. They're not writing down everything into their some sort of manual somewhere to find out what they're doing. They're actually walking around with some things in their head that if they leave is critical to other team members and impacts employee morale and just commitment of the team, because particularly if that's in a leadership position, it could be financially devastating and culturally devastating as well.
And Tuckman has a model. I'm not actually quite sure what year it comes from, but the Tuckman model of team dynamics. He talks about forming, storming, where the team everybody's kind of finding their groove, forming, storming, performing, norming, and then performing. But he also added in a fifth stage, which is mourning, where if a team member leaves or the project finishes or something happens to that team, they finally got to the stage where they are performing and norming and everybody's kind of in their groove, and you have these subtleties of team dynamics. And then something happens, that somebody leaves, either they leave the business or they leave to go to another team. The rest of the team can feel somewhat at sea. So not only does it affect the productivity of that team member or staff member who's going through this process, but it has a knock-on effect of the rest of the people that they work with.
I 100% agree. And divorce doesn't discriminate. It can hit those at the very lowest rungs of the ladder and absolutely at the very highest rungs of those ladders. And I know you have some stories. I'd love to hear, give us some. I know these are anecdotal, but tell us, give us some examples of some clients that you've had, because I know you do work with that very high net worth individual. Tell us about some of those instances where they needed the support that a divorce coach offers, and what actually happened.
Well, I worked with a lovely female manager. She worked for quite a big Irish corporate, and she had her role was a linchpin role. She was a high net worth earner. She had 3 children, and there was a position that she had been approached to apply for, and what was holding her back was her personal life was in a shambles, and she also had a lot of burden of responsibility in looking after 3 children, one of whom has additional needs. And so not only was she being held back mentally, but logistically, because she didn't have the support from her partner, because the relationship was disintegrating. The company she worked for engaged with one of the employee benefits programs that I work with, and she hired me as her divorce coach. So the first thing we did was we put a plan in place for her to do a lot of parking. So I said, okay, what can you get off your list? How much of your mental energy can you free up so that you can focus on the things that actually really matter to you? So bringing her through the program, the end result was that we came to a really, really good co-parenting arrangement with herself and her partner. Her partner actually didn't realize the level of stress and pressure that she was under. And so with this fantastic co-parenting arrangement that we came up with, it actually, in an ironic sense, gave her tons more free time. And so the relationship that she has with her children is considerably better because it's more focused. She's not spinning 23 plates all at the same time. It gave her more time to accept the role that she was being prepared for. She accepted a much higher salary and a much better benefits package that allowed her to purchase a separate property in her own name. So everybody benefited. Everybody benefited. Her partner, actually, the relationship with her partner it's okay. That's not always the case, but because they were able to go their separate ways from a logistical and financial perspective, come to a really, really good co-parenting arrangement that worked. And it was challenging because one of her children has additional needs and there's a lot of juggling that needed to happen. But her productivity improved enormously, not only in her working life, but in her personal life as well. And she gave herself permission to outsource
Mhm.
small things like somebody to clean her house,
Mhm.
somebody to do her laundry. She outsourced her laundry. I know they might seem kind of trivial things, but
But
she had accepted this huge burden of responsibility. I said, well, it's okay to outsource. And by allowing her to outsource those small things, she suddenly looked at in her corporate life and said, oh my goodness, there was so much more that she could delegate in her working life once she gave herself permission.
and sometimes it takes somebody like you as a divorce coach to show, think about it. She's an executive at a very high level, and even she couldn't see that at her office, she would outsource something trivial like or not as important on the scale, right? She would farm that out. She would hire somebody
Absolutely.
else to do these things. But we
Yep.
don't think about that for ourselves in our lives, right? This is something that we should all look at and say, what can I cut, or what can I bring in some support to bring in? And sometimes, that's a financial burden, so maybe you work out some other things. I have friends that actually trade services for cleaning, for those types of things, so it's not always having to be cash. As a matter of fact, I have a friend of my daughter's that she exchanges babysitting services for cleaning services, right? So it
And
works.
why not? Why not?
Why
But
not?
because she had moved into an even higher net worth space, it was almost like a veil had lifted, and she said, "What on earth am I doing? This is 20 euro of my time when my hourly rate is,
Right.
2,500,
500.
3,000 euro."
Right.
And when we did some really simple calculations, and this was back of an envelope stuff, and it's not that she didn't know it, she couldn't see it. And
Right.
there's a
And that's, yeah.
huge difference,
Yeah, you
huge. And coaching helped her do that. And so she was suddenly much more productive in her working life, much more productive in her personal life. And because all of this huge burden had been lifted, she was intrinsically so much calmer and even able to do some of the other benefits that her employer offered, like yoga classes at lunchtime.
Yeah, right? Exactly. So when you start to see that your life, if you would do this at work, if you would bring in somebody at work to do things that financially make more sense for you to not do, and you can, whether that's pay cash for them or trade services for them, it just makes a lot of sense. And that's what I love about coaching. Sometimes it's really hard to read the label on the jar when you're inside the jar, right? It's really hard to see yourself. And also, I think women can sometimes have that superwoman complex where they feel that they absolutely have to do everything themselves, and killing themselves is just a part of the process, right? Just
And you don't
over,
have to.
you don't have to.
No.
100% you don't
So
have to.
two
So,
books I would highly, 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 well, three books I would highly recommend if you're a woman listening. One of them is Rachel Rogers, We Should All Be Millionaires. And she talks about this hourly rate. Just work out your hourly rate and then work out what you can ditch. And Rachel Rogers has also been through a divorce, and I think it's a blended family. Um, Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office by Louis Frankel. That book has been around 100 years. Another super, super book. And Think and Grow Rich for Women by Sharon Lecter.
I
She
know
says,
Sharon.
oh, she is amazing. She came to Ireland recently. She is incredible. She says, we can have it all. We just don't have to do it all ourselves.
Right.
And it is maybe just something that kind of a burden that women put on ourselves. But when you give yourself permission And then when your employer gives you permission, and I'm using these terms quite loosely, but the permission is we are going to offer you these incredible benefits because we value you as an employee. And you know what? We're even going to give you the space during normal working hours. So you don't have to squish it in the evenings. Because as you said, divorce is 9 to 5.
It
So if
is.
you need to do this thing, we will accommodate you. And it pays dividends.
Yes.
Absolutely. And this particular client of mine, she had been headhunted by another company and she didn't, it was a job that the money was attractive, but it was going to take her away from her children, which she didn't want. And she was, well, I won't, I will, I won't, I. And it was a direct competitor, a lot of complexities around it. And she thought she felt so valued and supported where she was. She
Yeah.
thought, I'd be crazy. Everything I
Right.
have is here. So she
Rem-
just renegotiated a slightly different package that gave her so much more flexibility. And again, these are intangible, intrinsic benefits.
Remember the number one reason employees quit within 1 year of their divorce is because they felt uncared for and unsupported. Imagine what the financial impact on your business if just one of those executives didn't leave. Imagine the impact on that company and on the culture too. That spinning around, it gets a little crazy. One of the things that we talked about earlier before we got on this call was about some of the things that you feel that employers could do, including making those private spaces. Can you dive into that conversation a little bit about what are some specific things that an employer should have at the workplace for an employee going through this?
Absolutely. And they all begin with C to make it super easy to remember. So it needs to be convenient, as in, can it be done during normal working hours, or can you offer a little bit of flexibility around those working hours? Can it be convenient in that there is a space for that person to go? It has to be 100% confidential. Maybe, okay, the line manager is aware that this is what this person is going through. They don't need to know the details. Is there a confidential space? Because so many offices now are open plan. Is there a confidential soundproof booth?
Mhm.
Or can they take these calls at home or somewhere else? It does need to be consistent. So when you're hiring a coach, particularly in the space of divorcing, it needs to be consistent. So it does need to be the same person. So you build up that relationship and that rapport, because it takes time to build trust and it needs to be continuous. So it's not a one and done. Much as I'd love to say it is just
When-
take 2 aspirin, ring me in the morning, it's not a one and done. So it does need to be continuous. It needs to be collaborative. So again, there's a team involved. So like, who's on your team, who's on your bus?
Yeah.
So the collaboration is the divorce coach, the HR manager. Maybe there is a financial planner that can be hired as well. Maybe there is a
Men-
psychotherapist.
right. Mental health.
Maybe there's family therapist. So a collaborative approach as well is really important, and this can be offered through the employee benefits program. And it needs to be client focused. For however long this process takes, it's different for different countries, it has to be bespoke and custom,
Mhm.
because there's no one size fits all. Everybody's circumstances are different.
Mhm.
Uh, okay, there are overarching principles, but everybody's circumstances are different. And so that's why this consistent approach with the same coach, continuous, and keep it client focused.
I love that. It's so important that we all understand that just because maybe you're an HR manager and you went through your divorce, I promise you, no one else on the planet is just like yours. A divorce is as individual as a fingerprint, and we can't, we just can't look at anybody else's divorce and say, well, I know how to, I know exactly what's going to happen, or I know exactly what they're going through. Whereas we know a lot through experience, but we also, through our experience in this industry, understand that everybody, to your point, I love that you use bespoke, because that's so true. They need the utmost care with the best and the brightest that can bring the professional coaching and consultation to this process. It is such a challenge, this process, for those of us that understand the system. It's still a challenge even for us. But imagine not understanding what's going to happen to you. I don't care if you're the CEO of the most, one of the most prominent companies in your community. You don't know this process. I promise you that. Nobody does, including your attorneys and all of those other people. They
And
can sort of get you
they
there,
do,
but I'm sorry?
even if they do, they've been through it, they've been whatever, they are the best attorney, solicitor, legal representative in the world. Dentist children have the worst teeth. You cannot see it for yourself.
Yeah.
You just can't.
Yeah. Read
If you're like when you're stuck in the jar, you cannot read the label. So it's this very compassionate, highly confidential, external, supportive approach that is absolutely vital, vital, vital.
We don't understand. I want to shout this from the rooftops, but we don't understand the absolute incredible damage that unmanaged divorces cost our companies and our government agencies in services, social services, lost productivities to companies. And that lost productivity, that's a benefit that, the HR benefits manager sits there and goes, rolling their eyes. Oh yeah, everybody talks about lost productivity. Well, we talk about it in that there's absences for mandatory meetings. There's distractions, answering emails, providing evidence, taking phone calls because it's a 9-to-5 job. This, and of course, there's presenteeism. There is not one of your employees that's going through a divorce that isn't thinking about whether they're going to lose their child, lose their home, lose their job, lose their family, lose their coworkers, lose their friends. Everything is on the table. I always say that, divorce is not a legal crisis and it's not a mental health crisis. It is a full-blown life crisis, and everything is on the table. So I am, so grateful that we've been able to have this conversation, because this is the month, ladies and gentlemen. Typically, the traditional day is the Monday after the 1st of January on New Year's Day. So this week that we're in right now is a big week for people starting to do their research. They have made their New Year's resolution that they are just not going to do this for another year, that this is going to be the year they make those life changes. The holidays are over. The kids are back in school, and life in 2024 is going to look different for them. So I encourage you, if you are an employer that has employees that are maybe trying to show some signs that maybe there's something going on, reach out to us. We have a course for you with 5 SHRM credits. We have shows like this that are available on our YouTube channel and on our podcasts and on our LinkedIn. So reach out to us. If we can help you support your employees as they go through this process, please, we are here to help. And speaking of SHRM credits, I wanted to give you this link right here. Just click on that link, and that will take you to a form so that you can be sure to get your SHRM credits if you are a member of the Society for Human Relations Managers here in the US. And Aoife, thank you so much from across the pond. I know it's late, and I appreciate you so much. So thank you so much. And we will be back again next week with another topic around how you can support your employees as they move through the divorce process. So again, thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
See you next week. Bye for now.